although I was a typical Southerner, oblivious and indifferent to the sufferings in the North until it impacted me. I eventually came to realize that my experience is and always will be inextricably linked to every other trouble's atrocity. Like every victim, and indeed every foot soldier, I was and remain just an expendable pawn in the age-old Game of Thrones.
Good evening and welcome to News and Views on Cavan TV, and my name is Anya Duffy. This evening we are in the County Museum in Ballyjamesduff, County Cavan, for the annual Arthur Griffith Lecture. Tell me all about the museum, but I'm going to introduce her first. And now I'm speaking to Holly Roach, and Holly lives in Fermanagh. And Holly is the new, shall I say, curator of the museum here in Ballyjamesduff. How long are you the new curator, Holly?
I started in September last year, so about 8 months I think it is now, so not that long.
So you just about got over COVID.
Yeah.
The restrictions of COVID, I should say.
Opened in 1996. It was bought by Cavan County Council in 1994, and they did work to it for a couple of years. It was previously a convent and then a school, and so it opened as the museum in 1996.
And then if I'm right, then it was kind of left doing nothing for a while, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then someone came up with the wonderful idea, and maybe we should mention Savina Donahue in there, who was one of the first people to come up to work in this area, yeah?
Yes, so the original curator when the museum opened was a gentleman called Dominic Egan, and he was here for a couple of years, and Savina worked with him, and then when Dominic left, Savina took over as acting curator, then curator, and I think she was here for 20-something years, 23 years maybe. Yeah. So she was here for a long time, and she did a lot of work on the projects such as the trenches, the GPO replica. So a lot of that was the work that she did and really put Cavan County Museum on the map again.
Yeah, and it's a fabulous place, so worth the trip. But to get back to the idea, Holly, of a museum, people think, oh yeah, you go and see old things. No, it's not like that. There are exhibitions, there are talks, there are experiences here.
Yeah, that's right. And, you know, obviously museums are places that tell stories of the past, and that's always the case. But we do try to do a lot of different things and reach out to different types of communities, different types of audiences. As you said, we have art exhibitions which support local artists. We have a lot of workshops, children's workshops. So we have one on currently for the Easter half term. We work with the Ukrainian community, and we've done things with them. We have the lecture here this evening, and we've supported other lectures such as the Decade of Centenary lecture series with Cavan County Library. So we do try to do a lot of other things outside sort of the expectation
typical
of a museum. Yes.
Yeah. And one thing, may I mention one there, just on art, their exhibitions. A few weeks ago you had Emer Crow had an exhibition here.
We did, yes. Ema's a local ceramic artist, and she did an exhibition that was based around the bog landscapes of County Cavan, so that was a fantastic exhibition.
Well done. So great folks again, as I say, and if people out there have an idea in mind, should they get in contact with you?
Oh yes, I mean we're open to sort of talking to people in different community groups and things like that. We had a charity concert a couple of weeks ago. Musical evenings, yes. Well. We've had theatre productions. So, you know, we are a space as well as sort of a museum, or a space to be used by the community. So we're always happy to talk to people and listen to ideas and see what we can do.
Absolutely. So you have a calendar of events for the year?
We do.
Throw out a few things there.
Well, we'll have some summer sessions of traditional Irish music that we've booked in. So they'll run for 6 weeks, I think, in June and July. So that'll be fantastic. We'll be involved in the Cavan Calling programme for the end of July. And we'll be doing October workshops for Halloween, and we'll be doing summer workshops as well as lots of lectures and other things, and lots more art exhibitions as well. So.
It's a great honour to give this year's Arthur Griffith Lecture. Thanks to Cavan County Council, Cavan County Museum, and special thanks to Dermot McMonigal for his kind invitation, and also to Savina Donahue, co-founder of this event.
Here we are in Cavan County Museum at a wonderful evening at the annual Arthur Griffith Lecture. Now, who better to tell us all about it than the man that actually instigated or founded it or whatever, along with Savina Donahue, Dermot McMonigal, a man with a great interest in history. Dermot, this evening was a wonderful evening.
It was an absolutely fantastic talk. It's in depth. It gives you room to think and to look at reconciliation in it.
Moving.
Very moving, yes. He was wonderful that he's able to talk about his own experience, and maybe perhaps that's his strength, that he is able to talk about it and share it.
Yes, one thing I came across that I found of all of that was he spoke both sides of the story.
Well, I think
he can understand why the people did what they did, and he can understand how they felt and how the victims felt.
Yes, well, he was correct, and he could have gone into that even in more detail, in that everyone in the north of Ireland were victims of their own upbringing or of being poisoned by somebody else. As I said to somebody, I responded recently to a thing online and talked about, I said the problem in the north of Ireland during the Troubles, that there were too many armies and there's nobody in control. Now, if I won't go into that in depth here, but there were very, very many armies, and one didn't know what the other was doing, and they were on the same side.
We won't go into depth.
Yes.
We could go into depth to the history and the culture of things that have happened, but to get back to you initiating the Arthur Griffith, how did that come about?
Well, I was always interested in history growing up, and there was a connection in the family. My grandfather,
Bombay connection,
down in Ballyconnell, was appointed by Griffith to be a judge of the Sinn Féin courts long before they were established, and that was always. And I liked to follow it through. And then I looked at the county, and we've done nothing had done nothing for almost a century to remember Griffith, and I just said this would be a nice thing, and. It was, and the fact is, it gets such a fine response every year. But then I try to pick out the best speakers I can.
Well, definitely this evening has been a wonderful evening. I mean, I came here not knowing what to expect. I knew the background of Stephen Travers, the person I've seen in the media, but really, this evening was, as you say, in depth and very, interesting.
Yeah. Well, the problem is when we get the media at the moment, we get all the negatives or what's pointing towards negatives. But within the north of Ireland, there is a lot of reconciliation going on. There are a lot of communities have come together. People have come together. There's now accepted mixed marriages. So within the workplace, what's happening on the ground is not happening in Stormont, or it's not happening on our television screens. That's the problem. And therefore, that tends to dictate. But exactly, it's the people who are counting. After all, when we look back at 25 years ago, when everybody voted to accept the Good Friday Agreement, 94% voted in the south of Ireland to accept it, and 71% did in the north of Ireland. Now, that's a majority.
Okay, you said something there, Dermot, just is in my mind, I don't know what to say. You said that the people on the ground and the people in government have two different ideas. Which one's the best?
Oh, on the ground. I think
will that carry through? Because that's the common man on the street.
If you look at all the playbacks we've had recently on the Good Friday Agreement and the negotiations, the presence of the Women's Coalition was very strong, as was the presence of the PUP under David Irvine and his influences for reconciliation, for acceptance, and they were the minor parties within the talks. So therefore, that was more of proportionally a greater influence.
But do you not think it's sad, a little sad fact, and I think it's a big fact, in the time that it is, the 25th anniversary of the agreement talks, and to see the very high profile visit of President Biden to this country, that they couldn't have a parliamentary in power?
Well,
isn't that
the problem with Northern Ireland's it's been established historically. It wasn't voted upon by any person or persons only voted for in Parliament where the Home Rule Bill was poisoned and the Government of Ireland Act of 1920. But the people never had a plebiscite. So it was imposed, that Northern Ireland was an imposed entity on Ireland, not a voted for or an acceptable. But it was accepted within the context of the Good Friday Agreement, because we made changes to our constitution, and it was also recognising the identity of Northern Ireland. We take it from there. But we're inclined to forget, unionism has still poisoned itself, but that's diluting a lot faster than people might realise.
Okay, so what about the idea of an All-Ireland?
No.
Is there any possibility?
No.
Even if in like...
No, we can't talk. We cannot talk about an All Ireland because that is say we're going to take you over. When we look at the unification of Germany, which was
Brexit, we might have...
from given, the unification of Germany was a given, but they didn't see the problems because there were social problems, there were new cultural problems, there was commercial problems. And it's only now that they are starting to settle, and that's from 40 years ago. So it's going to take a long time for a new Ireland, not a united Ireland, but we have to talk about a new Ireland, a reconciled Ireland. But there's certain words we'll have to avoid using, and it will come because common sense, the economic forces will be a bigger influence than anything else.
I know how it feels to be bombed and shot, and to crawl across a blood-soaked field among the mutilated, lifeless bodies of my friends, through the smouldering body parts of members of the British security forces and loyalist paramilitary groups who unintentionally blew themselves to pieces while colluding to callously murder and frame a much-loved Catholic and Protestant pop group as terrorists.
Well, what a wonderful lecture here this evening. A very informative and in-depth, as Dermot McMonigal called it, lecture here this evening. And of course, the keynote speaker himself is Stephen Travers. Stephen, that was wonderful. You moved the people there this evening with your life story.
Well, it's I think hopefully my story is representative of so many people who never get the chance to tell their stories. I mean, ours is a high-profile case, but we had to work at that. As I said during the lecture, there was a time when people had forgotten us, and I just wanted to make sure that they didn't, because if they forget us, they forget what can happen to ordinary people.
So get back to the basics of this evening. It was like to talk about TARP, and that's Truth and Reconciliation Platform. And really for folk out there who are hearing all this for the first time, this is the story of the Troubles, and you don't like the word Troubles because it has killed almost 4,000 people in the north, and this is the story of victims, perpetrators and everything all coming together maybe on a platform, and a reason why and a reason not, and everything like that, and you're bringing all that to the fore, as which you did this evening during your lecture.
Yeah, it's important that we have a conversation. There's a move towards a united Ireland, so which I would support. I have to say, but we have to know, each other before we unite. I mean, you can hardly imagine people getting together, having a conversation about anything, and I'm sure during these conversations people will disagree and they'll agree.
When you say people getting together, do you mean the perpetrators and the victims?
You know what? I don't like to pinpoint any particular...
Just for name's sake, yeah.
Well, human beings, because my experience is that everybody is a human being. When you sit down to talk to them, now there are some people who are just, psychopaths. When you go back and you look at people like Jackson or Robin Jackson, people like that, and but the vast majority of people who were caught up in this, victims, of course, through no fault of their own, others because they were convinced that this was the only course of action for them, whether it was one side or the other.
And when we're talking about one side, we're talking about Catholic and Protestant. And you made a very apt statement there during your talk, is that you've got people saying different prayers to the same God. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when you're in trouble, You do hope that there's a higher power than ourselves, and that has to be, the person that you're hoping is going to intervene in your life. And I found that, without being sort of, I wouldn't say that I'm overly religious. I'm probably not religious, and the old cliche, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. But I think I do certainly acknowledge that there is a greater power than us, and that if we believe that the buck stops with us, or that there's there's nobody. That we're the only ones who can solve these problems, and as I said earlier on, to resolve the issues that we have between us.
You were saying communications and reconciliation, even though you don't like the word reconciliation either, but that transcends all of the trouble and kind of brings it to closure, maybe.
Well, when I say I don't like the word reconciliation, only in certain contexts. I mean, there is, as I said, and I did say that reconciliation between Northern and Southern nationals is important. We can use the word in that respect, because there was a time when we were all singing off the same hymn sheet, but hurt and disappointment and all of that type of thing. Of course, then there are, there's been hurt in the south, where there's guards, members of the army, the guards, police force,
have died here too.
Have died as well. But I didn't want to focus on that. I do believe that we need. That's a reconciliation. It's probably the unspoken one and taken for granted. So hopefully it isn't, because there is still a lot of hurt, and of course then the having the conversations with each other, and however it turns out, at least we'll have spoken. But you don't want another Brexit where people just voted for something that they didn't know what they were voting for.
You got closure in 2021 when you got through the court, and you got, what would the word be? Your troubles were acknowledged and you were compensated for it, and you hoped that would open maybe paths for other people in the same predicament. But they're trying to bring in a bill now in Britain that's going to scooper all that.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to pass. If it does pass, it'll be very watered down. It's just an obscene bill. It drives a coach and four through every human rights commitment in the entire world. I wouldn't say, Anya, that I got closure. I don't think there's any such thing as closure after an event like that. There's managing.
But that was a good result for 48 years of work.
I think that everybody deserves their day in court. Now, how it turns out, it can't always be predicted. But I wasn't happy with the fact that I wanted our case to be heard, but other pressures prevailed. But
okay,
yeah.
Just one more thing I'd like to say is that you transcended everything, all that you suffered and everything, and you saw both sides of the story. That's a wonderful message and a powerful message to give out in this day and age when we are trying to change the culture of different religious beliefs. And you gave that in bucketfuls to the people this evening. Well,
I think, look, there's a word you used earlier on, acknowledgement. If you acknowledge the suffering of people, you're going a long way in bringing these things, I suppose, to a close. Reconciliation, as I say, is a subjective word. Let's see. Some words are not enough. We have to have actions. We have to have examples being given by people, and I think on the whole, victims are giving great example. They're willing to stretch out a hand, and people in Tarpany. If you go to our website, tarp.global,
which is Truth and Reconciliation Platform.
Yeah.
You also have a book.
Yeah, the book came out in 2007, and it led to the Emmy-nominated Netflix documentary. So if you've got Netflix, go and watch that.
Yeah, I've watched it twice.
Yeah, it's been a huge success. Yeah. But as I say, not everybody gets an opportunity like that. So TARP tries to give people an opportunity to.
Stephen Travers, you've done a lot in the last 48 years. From what next? What would you like to see next?
To be honest with you, I'm going to be a bit greedy here. I would like to get some peace. Haven't found it yet. but I'll only have.
Sorry, now peace nationwide or peace within
No,
yourself?
actually, peace of mind myself. When I was young, I asked my father, what's the greatest achievement anybody can have, and he said peace of mind. And
Are you getting near it?
hopefully, if we see that education, and as I said, we must teach history, we must teach people.
The rear view mirror.
Yeah, the rear view mirror. That's what this lovely building is as well. This museum is a rear view mirror.
Okay, Stephen, I'm going to throw you to the lambs, or the lions now, and I'm going to give you the camera for 1 minute. Is there anything else that you'd like to finish this wonderful evening off with for the folks out there who are watching this and will have seen the lecture online?
Well, I think the best result we can get from tonight is that we start a conversation. Now, not everybody is going to agree, but if we can have a conversation about the past, then I think we're on the right track then to solving the problems. As we said, Seamus Mallon said, people aren't going to go anywhere, but and we have an option. Learn to live together or get on with killing each other, and I know which one I choose.
Well done, and thank you, Stephen Travers, once again for a wonderful evening, a wonderful talk, as your wife called it. It's a talk, not a lecture, or a wonderful lecture, whatever way you want to elect it, here in the County Museum in Cavan, and we wish you a safe journey home in the storm.
Thanks very much, Anya. It's been a privilege to talk to you.
Well, that's it this evening from the annual Arthur Griffith lecture in Cavan County Museum. What an evening we had. We spoke to Stephen Travis, the keynote speaker this evening, and we had a word with Holly Roach, the new curator of this wonderful museum here in Ballyjamesduff in Cavan. And folks, if you haven't been here, please do come along. So that's it. I'd like to thank you and thank everybody for watching us on Cavan TV's News and Views.